All right, so we got a new fragrance from Lattafa. This is going to be another fragrance within their Asad line. This is Lattafa's Asad Bourbon. So this fragrance just kind of came out of nowhere. I want to say maybe like a few weeks ago. And I saw a lot of people really kind of getting hyped for this fragrance. You know, obviously with the name Asad Bourbon, a lot of people were kind of thinking, you know, was this going to be like a really sort of boozy type of scent, you know, obviously with it having that bourbon name. And, you know, the note breakdown did look, you know, pretty interesting. So I went ahead and picked this one up. You know, I feel like all of the Asad, you know, fragrances that I've smelled anyway, they all have been solid. The original Asad Zanzibar, and then now this one. So we'll kind of see where this one kind of fits in, you know, within those three fragrances, and also kind of see, you know, how this fragrance does performance wise and what it smells like. So this is the, you know, presentation for Asad Bourbon. Obviously, it's going to have pretty much the same sort of presentation that you get with the other Asad fragrances, except this just has like a brown and gold sort of color scheme. But you have the name of the fragrance here on the front, Asad, Lattafa, and then you have bourbon written here at the top. You've got the Lattafa logo up top there. The same kind of, you know, I don't know exactly what this is, what's inside of that medallion. I don't know if that's like almost supposed to be like a animal or something like that that's supposed to be inside of there. But you get this on all of the Asad boxes. Authenticity sticker here, the ingredients and stuff like that. And then you've got like the barcode and like the batch date down here at the bottom. This particular bottle, this was produced in January of 2024. So, you know, obviously brand new. And it's going to open up just like all of the other, you know, Asad boxes do. And you get the same presentation for the most part, except again, it's going to be like a brown and kind of goldish color scheme. Almost like a brown, and I guess you could say this is more of like a bronze color or so. But you get what I'm saying. So this one, when I first sprayed this, it did smell a lot like another fragrance that I have in my collection, and I'll be going over that in just a second here. But as far as the note breakdown goes for Asad Bourbon, with this one, you're going to get in the top notes Mirabelle plum, pink pepper, and lavender. In the mid, you get cacao, nutmeg, and Davana. And then in the base, you get bourbon, vanilla, amber, and vetiver. So obviously there's no like bourbon or boozy sort of note that you get with this fragrance. And I mean, it doesn't really come off as boozy either. So that was definitely a surprise, you know, especially with this one being called Asad Bourbon. But what I will say is what this did smell a lot like when I first sprayed it on was it immediately reminded me of Dumont's Nitro White. So there are some obvious differences between the two fragrances. But what I will say is I kind of feel like these two fragrances are almost kind of like in the same sort of family, or, you know, they're kind of like the same style of fragrance. Now, the Dumont Nitro White, this is definitely going to be a lot heavier, in my opinion. It's going to be heavier, denser, and definitely sweeter, also fruitier. Whereas the Asad Bourbon, it definitely, you can tell this is a different fragrance than what, you know, Nitro White is. So this is not going to come off as fruity as what Nitro White does in the opening. This almost, to me, the Nitro White kind of comes across as like having the same sort of fruitiness as what like Nitro Red does, at least in the initial opening spray. That's kind of like the level of fruitiness that I feel like I get from Nitro White. Whereas with this, when you first spray this on, you can tell that, yeah, it kind of has, you know, like a fruity sort of fresh opening to it, but it's not like a super fruity fragrance. So yeah, you get that Mirabelle plum in the opening, and that's what kind of pulls you into this fragrance. But I feel like you immediately are met with that pink pepper and definitely the lavender for sure. And they're all kind of blended together really nicely. So it's not like you're necessarily getting more of like the plum over anything else. I feel like the plum, the pink pepper, and the lavender, when you first spray these on, they really blend together really well. They really do. Now, immediately after you spray this, then that's when you start getting a lot of that nutmeg that starts to come in. And also the cacao is there, but it's not like super obvious. And it never really is at any point in time in this fragrance. I feel like the cacao, it's there to kind of give this fragrance a slightly more kind of drier sort of feel to it. So this is definitely like, this isn't like your like whipped cacao or anything like that, or like your creamy cacao. This is like your bag of like powdered cacao for the most part. And like I said, it adds, it really kind of, dries the fragrance out a lot. Almost kind of makes it, seem like it's like really woody. Although this fragrance doesn't have like any, at least not from what I can see anyway, it doesn't have any like actual woody notes to it. But I feel like that cacao note, it kind of adds to like what seems to be like a woody sort of accord to the fragrance. Now, also, again, when comparing this to something like Nitro White, this is definitely going to be a lot more sort of lighter and aromatic than what Nitro White is. So again, I don't want to, sit here and say that this is like a clone of Nitro White, or, that it's like a heavily inspired fragrance of Nitro White, because I don't believe that it is. These two are definitely two different fragrances. And definitely once the two fragrances start to kind of go into like the dry downs, that's when they really, really smell completely different. I just feel like at least in that initial opening, when you kind of get like that blast of like the Mirabelle plum mixed with the lavender and the pink pepper, these two do smell a lot alike. But do I necessarily think that these are redundant to have? Not necessarily, no. You'll definitely, again, you'll be reminded of this fragrance, when you smell this fragrance for the first time. But as you kind of spend time with both of them, you definitely are able to tell that, they're two completely different fragrances. So this fragrance, man, I do think that this is one of the better, fragrances within the Asad line for sure. Like I said, it comes off as, really sort of sweet and fruity, but also at the same time, kind of fresh and spicy as well. And then, definitely once you get into the dry down, it does become really sort of dry, but yet at the same time, vanillic and ambery for sure. That's the best way for me to kind of describe this. So this is like it's like a really spicy, vanillic, yet at the same time, kind of, I would say the opening is definitely fresh, but then it does start to become dry and ambery and, sweet as it starts to dry down for sure. Now, other than it kind of, having a slight resemblance to the Nitro White, I don't necessarily know that this is like cloning anything. It may be, and I just haven't smelled that original fragrance, but at least to my knowledge, I don't know that this is cloning anything. I know like when this first got put on Fragrantica, they had people on there saying this was like a Grand Soir clone. This doesn't smell anything at all like Grand Soir, not at all. I'm trying to look and see what were some of the other fragrances that they were comparing it to as well. So, I mean, it looks like right now This is being compared to Azaro Most Wanted, Scandal Pour Homme Absolu by Jean Paul Gaultier, and then the Most Wanted Parfum by Azaro. So I haven't smelled any of those fragrances. It looks like they're comparing this to Valentino's Born in Roma Intense. I mean, I can kind of see that, you know, especially with the lavender that's in this fragrance. It does smell a little similar to, you know, Born in Roma Intense. But this to me is just a lot more spicier than what Born in Roma Intense is. And to me, it comes across as a lot more kind of aromatic than what Born in Roma Intense does. Born in Roma Intense is absolutely going to be a lot thicker, at least to me anyway, than what Asad Bourbon is. So, I mean, this could kind of be like a mashup of, you know, a lot of those different types of fragrances like Born in Roma Intense, Most Wanted, Scandal. But I don't necessarily know that it's any one thing in particular, you know, that it's actually, you know, inspired by or cloning or anything like that. But overall, man, this is a very good fragrance. I do think this is going to be, you know, best for kind of like the fall and the winter. And also you could say probably early spring. It's not necessarily a fragrance that I would, you know, reach for in the summertime. But maybe if you live in like a more kind of cooler climate to where it doesn't get super hot in the summer, you could probably rock this one at night in the summer on like a cooler night. Now, as far as the performance goes, the performance on this is actually quite good. So performance wise, when it comes to the projection is at least about an arm's length for like the first 2.5 hours or so. So, you know, it is comparable, I would say, in performance to what Nitro White is, but this is definitely the stronger fragrance, Nitro White. This does push out a little bit more than that. And in terms of like the overall longevity on Asad Bourbon, this easily lasted on me over 10 hours. I wore this fragrance the day that I got sick. And, you know, I was definitely having to, you know, go to the bathroom a lot. My body was, you know, definitely getting heated up a lot, just from me being sick. And I was sweating a lot that day. And this lasted on me like all day, despite the fact that several times that day, like I was covered in sweat because of, you know, how sick I was. And it kept pushing all day long. So this definitely does last quite a long time for sure. And, you know, again, this is a very nice quality scent, man. I would definitely say that this is absolutely going to be like designer quality for sure. So, you know, for the $30 to $40 or so that this is typically going to go for, I do feel like this is absolutely worth it for sure. Now, obviously, as time goes by, this one is definitely going to come down in price. More than likely, it's going to, you know, probably come down under that $30 mark, you know, probably around that $25 to $30 mark. So if you want to wait on this one, I would say probably in 6 months, that's probably where this one will be. And you can definitely pick it up for that price. I can't remember exactly how much I paid for this, but I believe it wasn't more than like $40 to $45, which I feel like for this fragrance that it is worth that much for sure. Like I said, this is definitely designer quality, and it is a very good scent to wear around, you know, kind of like the fall, winter, and early springtime for sure. So definitely, man, Asad Bourbon is one that I would recommend. Now, in terms of where I would place this one between Asad Zanzibar, and then this one, I think for me, this one would be number one. And then I would have to put Asad, the original one, a little bit after this one. And then Asad Zanzibar, I think I would probably put last. Asad Zanzibar, I mean, I did like that one, you know, at first when I got it. But I felt like as I wore that one a little bit more as time kind of went by, I just really didn't reach for that one that much. And I just preferred other fragrances over that, sort of scent profile. So, not to say that, Asad Zanzibar is like a terrible fragrance. I just think when compared to Asad Bourbon and then, the original Asad, I would prefer to wear, this one and the original Asad over that one. So this one, yeah, like I said, is definitely so far the best one out of that Asad line that I've smelled for sure. So if I'm gonna give this fragrance a overall rating, this one, I would easily give this one like a 9 out of 10 for sure. This is a very mass appealing, I guess you could kind of say almost kind of like elixir style fragrance, from Lattafa that, really has a really, really good, quality smell to it for a really low price. And it also performs really good as well. So definitely I would recommend checking out Asad Bourbon for sure. And also, let me know what you all think about Asad Bourbon if you all have actually picked this one up. Is this one also your favorite Asad, within the sort of Lattafa collection? And if not, which one is? Definitely let me know in the comments. Also, I'll have a link in the description to where you can actually purchase this one. And also, if you're brand new to the channel, do me a favor, go ahead and subscribe. And again, that's Jamar from Vegas Scents. I'll see you all in the next video.